Hello you lovely lot, and welcome once again to the beautiful Partridge Lakes. So on the last basics video we covered all things in shallow water, mudline fishing, cheeky. This time we're going to be looking at fishing in the deeper water. Very pellet based this one folks, because time of year, where are we now? Right at the end of August. Yeah, literally it's September next week and it should be blooming warm, but it's not folks. I think this swim should be pretty good. You've got, like, I'm going to say, obviously it'll work all year through, this like pellet fishing, but in particular like now it can be like deadly, you know, tapping in a few micros. We'll talk through bait in a sec, how we're going to feed it, whether we're going to feed it loose or on a little babby ball, and then an expander on the hook. Obviously when it comes really cold, that's when maggots come into play, but we're going to be going through pellets today. So I'm going to be showing you, when we're plumbing up, where I choose to fish it. I'm going to plumb and find where the deepest bit of water is. Now today folks, this water level is like a foot down, because we have had blooming loads of rain, but for some reason it just seems to be obviously soaking into the ground. It's not going into the lakes. It should be a foot deeper than what it is. Certainly winter levels, it's probably 18 inches to nearly 2 foot down on winter levels. So we've only actually got, I'm going to say, just over 4 foot down the middle, but it's still fishing the deeper water down the middle. So what I'm going to do is find that where the horrible silt and shit collects, and then just move sort of like a little bit further up the slope. I don't want to be fishing that horrible stuff, because that's where when a fish comes into your peg and you see them bubbles going all over the place, the fish absolutely erupt that bottom, and then basically they just can't see your hook bait. I'm not going to say they're not going to fizz where we're fishing, because it's still going to be quite soft bottom, cheeky, but it's not going to fizz nowhere near as much as what it would do in the deepest bit of water. So we're just coming up that slope a little bit. Rig's really simple folks. Now I will touch upon the difference in floats for, like, obviously the different depths. Obviously I've chosen a float today, I spat everywhere then folks, I do apologise. I've chosen a float that'll be best suited to the conditions that I've got, for like no more than sort of 4 and a bit foot. So elastic wise again, so heavily emphasis on F1's. Again, you're going to catch absolutely everything swimming down the middle, you know, big wobbly carps, whatever, but F1's in particular, 11's Dura hybrid, nice and soft, cope with everything. 0.18 mainline, again, my standard sort of mainline material folks, 0.18 AccuPower, really nice and solid, that line. Just coming down the rig, we've got 2 number 8s back shots. Now you remember in the other video, I Tipex them out so I could see them in the dark water. I've got white water in front of me now, so I've just left them black so I can actually see them, yeah? Again, nice and close to the float, so you're getting that presentation, super bang on if you like. And then float wise, we've got a 412s. We're fishing pellets float, so it's an F1 pellet. But you know, it wouldn't matter if that was an F1 pellet or an F1 maggot, wire, carbon. This time of year, I'm not going to say it matters. The main thing though folks, the difference between this and obviously when you're fishing that shallow water, is this body of the float, that stretched sort of rugby ball. Yeah, the presentation is perfect. You won't want a little stumpy float fishing in deep water, because your float's all over the place. That's why you need a longer float, slightly longer float, with this elongated body, so you're getting that presentation absolutely bang on. Now I've chosen to use a 412s, which takes 5 number 9s. It takes 6 number 9s, and that'll dot that float right down to there, because F1 fishing, it needs to be dotted right down. Because I'm fishing in, you know, sort of 4 and a bit foot, no deeper, I'd go to a 412s. If it was up to sort of 5 foot or 5 foot I was looking for, I'd go to a 414s. 6 foot, I'd go to a 416s. But it's the rig you choose is for the depth of water. Obviously I've got this depth, that's why I've gone to a 412s. Again, conditions, you know, that'll be another reason that change. Obviously it's flat calm today. If it was really windy and you got a bit of tow on, I choose to use a 414s in this depth of water, just so I can get that rig nice and stable. But with it being like it is today, 412s absolutely bang on. And now coming to the business end, so you can see there, what's that over, sort of 15 inches or so. We've got a series of number 9 shots. Stots, again, could use stots, not a problem at all. You know why I like to use shots, so they don't move. Every time you're netting a fish, they stay put and they don't move. Obviously match conditions, I don't want to be moving them shots all over the place, so that's why I've gone for that. Sort of tapered. I don't go for a bulk. If there was, the time I would go for a bulker shot, like you would in shallow water, would be if there was loads of fish there and they're really homing in on that bait. You put your bulk there, drop your rig right over it and get that bait down nice and quick. But I like to spread my shots out to start with, and that can change, you know, as we get fishing. And then again, hook length wise, really simple folks. It's another one straight out of the packet, 0.13 GPMB hook. These are 6 inches. I've just trimmed it down to 4 inches. Really simple, nothing complicated in the rig at all. The main thing with this, folks, is finding the right depth, which we'll go to in a sec, and the feeding as well. So let me talk you through the feeding. So we have got micros. Done loads of videos on preparing these. These are just 2mm Screttins micros. Soaked them for sort of 30 seconds this time of year. In the winter I'd just leave them and let the water absorb in them pellets, but this time of year I still want them a little bit tacky, almost like what you'd have them for a method. Now what that allows me to do, obviously I can feed them loose. Yeah, I'll feed them loose to start with, and what that'll do, I can spread them over a bit of an area and attract more fish that way. Once I've got fish in the peg and I really want to home the fish in, what you'll see me do is make a little tiny ball out of them. Not a big ball, only like a cheeky, only like, it's cold, all right, only like a grape sized ball. Now even in that grape sized ball, yeah, that's all we're going to do. You can see there's quite a bit of bait in there. Doesn't matter how hard you squeeze them micros, they'll always break out into that form. So you can see, imagine your hook bait over that, it's just a bite every time. So once we get a few fish in the peg, I will start to put a ball in and then fish super accurate right over the little tiny ball of micros. But to start with, we're going to be sprinkling a little bit of bait in, yeah? So you can see they're going over a bigger area, sort of like 2 foot square if you like, just to attract them fish and attract them with the noise, but also the bait falling through the water will grab the fish's attention and hopefully send him down on our bait. Now, hook wise, I've got just some Sonny Baits Pro Expander 4mm. Put them in water as soon as I got here, and they'll take sort of 30-40 minutes. Do them the night before is probably a little bit better though, folks. Soaking them in water, putting them in a little babby plastic bag, putting them in the fridge, and they'll be absolutely perfect. The beauty of these Sonny Baits ones though, you can see there, they all sink. Yeah, so your hook bait in that, you know it's not going to float. Absolutely perfect bait. Not wrong with using a 6mm, but obviously with the fish that we're after, in particular F1's, that's why I'll choose to use 4mm. Don't really use maggots on this line because of the little small bobby fish, so markers and expanders is the way forward. So without further ado, I'm going to put plummet on and show you where I'm fishing. Right, plummet on, I want to show you where we're fishing and where we're choosing to fish. So as I touched upon before, I don't want to go in that horrible silt, loads of bubbles and that. Now there's not much variation in depth. I've probably only got, I'm going to say 4 or 5 inches, but that can be all the difference. Yeah, it's nice and really nice and smooth actually, the taper on the shelf, until you get sort of, I'm going to say about 10 meters, and it really does come up sharp. But obviously I want to still remain in the deepest bit of water. So my deepest bit of water is around there. So if Rich can track this, yeah, that's my deepest bit of water there. Yeah, all the horrible soft silt and everything, don't want to be anywhere near that. So what I'll do is I'll keep going up the slope a little bit. See, it's similar depth there, and then it just starts getting a little bit shallower there. Yeah, ever so much shallower. Just going to start to come up a little bit again, and I'm choosing to fish right at the end of my pole here, so the nice marker just starting to get a little bit shallower there. Now if I have my pole under my elbow, sort of halfway down my box, that is my marker. I've got my reed on the far bank. You see where I plumbed up here, I should be sort of middle to the bottom of the body of the float, and it just feels that a little bit heavier there. Don't get me wrong though, folks, I'm still going to have it where they blow a little bit. Yeah, you're still going to have that bubbling a little bit, but you can see I'm dropping that plummet and there's not plugging whatsoever. If I just go a little bit further out again, it's just going to come up that little bit shallower. Yeah, you see there, just going that little bit shallower all the time. So I don't want to go in the horrible silt in the deepest bit of water. I want to make sure I'm up that slope a little bit out of that silt, and that's where I'm choosing to fish, and that's how I choose to fish as well. So bottom of the body to like middle of the body. Right, let's come back and then I'll talk you through what pots we're going to use first and foremost. So starting off wise, I'm going to be going onto that kind of pot. Remember me saying before, I want to spread my bait out a little bit. Basically I want to grab that fish's attention. That'll be perfect for that. Little tiny house, the smallest Preston toss pot, and all I've done, I've just cut a hole that a little bit bigger, just so then pellets can release a little bit quicker. You can leave them intact if you want, but you'll be tapping your pole for that a little bit longer. I just want to make sure they come out fairly quick. That's what I'm going to choose to start off on. Once, oh, it's blooming raining. Once I've got the fish sort of feeding, I want to really home in on that a little ball, I'll go to a medium toss pot, so that when I'm making my little ball, yeah, my little grape-sized ball, that goes in that pot perfect and can come out nice. What you've got to be careful of when you're feeding micros, there's probably, micros are the best bait in the world, folks, for getting fish into your peg, but probably the worst bait in the world for getting too many fish in your peg, liners, foul hookers, that kind of thing. So you've got to be really careful. I probably won't go on to a big pot like that, because the chances of me, you know how much I love feeding, I'd make a ball that big and put it, you know, put it in that kind of size. Yeah, so I'd make a big ball out like that, and there'd be nothing to stop me feeding like that every time. Whereas if you choose a smaller pot in the first place, if I was to put that big ball in, it wouldn't fit in. So you're choosing to choose a pot for the amount of bait that you want to fish. It might be that I'll just stay on that one and make a little tiny ball up just that fits in that. Depends how many fish are coming into the peg. So, waffling away, I'm going to put this one on first, my little sprinkly one. Sprinkles! And then we're going to do it in a wanna. Right, so let's go. Let us go! Come on, Richard, let's go and catch some fishes. So, give that a little bit of a dink. 4mm expander on. Now we're probably going to catch a goujon straight away. I'd imagine we catch goujons anyway. And then fill that pot up. I'm going to completely fill it up. Let's break the micros back up. Yeah, so you see me there. You zoom down that, Rich. Completely fill that pot up. Don't need to press them down or anything like that. And then what I'll do, I'll lay the rigging first, and then I'll sprinkle my bait over the top. So first things first, get on your markers. So rig's laid in first, that's my marker there. I'm going to stretch out a little tiny bit further forward, but because I want that bait over a bit of an area, yeah, see how them pellets are going in. Now I'm just going to bring my float right over the top, and that's it, we're fishing. Nice and quickly, we're fishing. Just sink that back shot down, just lower that float a little bit. There we go, fishing in place. Now, because we have got a little bit of a slope on the bottom, I have laid that in so the bait's basically going straight down. My hook bait is going straight down with my loose feed. What might be better is me bringing that float back towards me and then shoving it back up the slope. So you're in a cave, but we'll see how we get on first. Because it's only a gradual slope, it's nothing steep, there's nothing to stop me lifting and dropping either, folks. I do like a lift and drop, as you know. That was a little bit of a dink there then. So there's a fish coming into the peg. But what can work, it's blooming rain, what can work really well, folks, is that. Little tiny lifts and drops. Especially if you're not on a slope, it will work really well for you. Yeah, I can't stress that enough. Don't just leave it, you know, suspended there. Obviously, completely different to when we were fishing in that shallow water in the last video. You need to leave your rig put, no lifting and dropping, because you're in a little tiny pile. But where I've spread that bait a little bit, then that lifting and dropping does grab the fish's attention sometimes. It's a little bit like a lighthouse, that float, folks, I won't lie, so I probably need to put another shot on it. Longest I'd leave it would be, starting off a session, I'm probably only going to leave it sort of 3 minutes maybe before I come back and feed again. And after I've done that, maybe 3 times, 2 or 3 times, you had a little tiny indication then. Yeah, 2 or 3 times, that's when I'd probably leave it like 5 minutes before I fed again. Another little dink then. There's fish coming into the peg. Just going to give it a bit of encouragement. It's all about, obviously, the feeding is the most important thing. You've got to keep that bait going in. Now, bites on this, that was a little dink then. They'll either be nice and fast, or they'll just be nice and slow. Usually the fast bites, but because we're fishing a little bit over depth, fish will be nice and confident in that deeper bit of water as well. They might just suck that bait in and carry on feeding and not realise there's the hook in the mouth. Completely different bites to what you get in that shallow water on a mud line, where they're nice and fast. There's usually a lot slower. Just lift that float out again. So I'm not overly concerned about being direct on my marker on this feed, because I spread the bait out a little bit. But certainly when so there's a little bit of a liner then. Certainly like when I'm feeding a little tiny ball, I want to make sure I'm right over it. It does make a massive difference. You notice there's some fish fizzing there as well. If that was in the main bit, you know, the main depth of water, where it's deeper, that'd just be erupting now. It'd be going absolutely nuts, it would. But because we're just up that slope a little bit, in the nice, cleaner water, should I say, then it's nowhere near as bad. I'm not gonna, you know, loose feed. Obviously loose feeding micros is a big no-no. I'm not gonna, what I used to do a lot was make a little ball out and throw that in, but I mean, it's all right when there's a lot of fish there, but you're just not being accurate enough. I'd definitely recommend with this style of fishing, folks, just feeding everything through a pot, but be strict on yourself, yeah? Don't wait too long before you come back and put some more bait in. It will make a big difference, that, definitely. Which is probably what I'm going to do in a sec. I know I said I'd wait 3 minutes, but you know what I'm like, folks. Oh, a little dink then. See, if I had another shot on, I'd have stuck at that, and it'd probably been a proper bite. I'm not liking how my float is at the minute, folks. A little bit high, like a lighthouse. Oh, that was a little dink then. Right, I'm going to come back, put another little tiny babby shot on, because there's definitely fish there. We had a few little signs before it. Definitely fish there. And I'm just going to tap these in, these micros in again, just over a smaller area. Still going to tap them in. Is that expander still alright? Expander's still alright. So again, I'm going to completely fill it, get that bait in, and I'm going to change or lay the rig in this time. I'm going to, as I'm shipping out, that rig's naturally back towards me. Yeah, so I'm going to leave the float there. That's on my marker, slightly past it to allow for that drop. Tap that bait in over a little bit bigger area, but we're still sort of like, it's going to end up in like a foot. Now, because that rig's naturally back towards you, I'm just going to wait until the shots catch up with themselves and drop that in. There we go. Perfect. You see the difference in presentation there, yeah? So I'm on that slope, like tiny little dink there. That could have been on the micros through the water. Now, incidentally, like with pellet fishing, maggot fishing, if I'd had maggots on there, folks, I'd give it a big one. But that's what happens when you give it a big one, your pellet falls off. That strike before it, that's how you want to be striking with a pellet. That strike then, that's your maggot strike. Yeah? If you strike too hard, then your bait's falling off. Now, I'm not going to feed again now, because the micros that I've fed before will probably be getting on the bottom now. And that's the thing with the micros, you can definitely overfeed them at times. So you look at all them bubbles coming up there now. Even though we're up the slope a little bit, we are still going to get them fizzing away. So let that come in, right. So tiny little dinks now, or little babby strikes. You don't need to strike hard with pellets. I always do, folks, you saw then. Well, I was demonstrating the difference between maggots and pellet strike. That's my excuse. Reality is, folks, I just got a little bit blooming giddy, stuck the pellet off. There we go. You saw that, there's literally a tiny little babby lift up and there's one on. It's such an effective way of fishing. And I think obviously a day like this where it has gone colder, the water's a bit clear, I think that's where the majority of these, certainly them stockies, are going to be, in that deeper water. I think we'll have a right good do there. It could be potentially, as the session progresses, we might catch 2 or 3 fish off one feed, almost like winter skimmer fishing. You know what I mean? Certainly if they're that size, sort of like 8-10 ounce kind of thing, we don't need to feed a lot of bait for them. But I will show you the difference. I'm going to do it now, actually. So obviously when you're waiting to get fish in your peg, tap your bait in, yeah, tap them over a bit area. Now obviously there's fish there now, so what I'm going to do is really zone the fish in now. I'm not going to move me float as much, if at all. I just want it resting over that little tiny pile of micros. I'm going to show you how effective it can be. Obviously with fast forward and everything, if I was in a match I'd just carry on as it is, but I know from previous experience what happens if you just constantly just loose feeding the micros rather than putting them in a bowl. You can get too many in your peg, and obviously they're falling so slow fish are coming in all over the place. But to start off with, it's the right thing to do because you need to attract them fish into your peg. So on with an expander, and I'm going to make now in fact, let me show you how I make the ball out of these. Actually, them fingers there, so my thumb and my index finger, what I'm going to do is come into the pellets. Yeah, come into the pellets, and I'm forcing the pellets into that little gap there between my middle finger, my index finger and my thumb. Forcing that in, I'm just going to give them a squeeze, and that's how you get the same size ball every time. And then what you can do is bring it into your hand and just mould it round so it's in that nice ball, and that you'll get the same size pretty much every time, nice and consistent, because we're all about giving away these tips, aren't we? So that goes in there. Be careful as you're shipping out. Obviously it's in a little ball, it is prone to falling out, so just take your time when you're shipping out. Now you'll notice this time how accurate you can be. So the first thing I'm going to do is get my marker. So my float's on my marker there. Stretch out a little bit more, and I'm just going to, you see that ball plop out. There you go. Lift my float up. Now that ball will not take long whatsoever to get down to the bottom. It's probably on the bottom now. And then just put your float right into that little tiny ball of pellets. Now obviously, remember, striking wise, don't strike too hard. Don't strike too hard on dew, little tiny dinks. But it's such an effective way of fishing. It's almost like method feeder fishing. There you go. You saw how quick that one was compared to obviously before. I know we were starting off before, but that's what can happen. Oh, and it blooming fell off. That's because I didn't give it a big one, but joking apart, folks, you don't need to give it a big one. Won't fall up that. It's F1's for you folks, they do fall off. So I'm going to do that again, make a little ball. I mean, obviously, a little F1, just like we've had, like 8 to 10 ouncer, that'd nail a little ball of pellets like that. But again, keep your eye on them, see what's happening. There'll be some days where you can catch sort of 2, 3, 4 fish on one little tiny ball of feed. Certainly them tiny ones. The bigger ones, anything a pound plus, I'll probably feed every time for them because they will take quite a bit of feed. But same thing again, stretch out a little bit further, plop your little ball in on your marker, come back on your pole, lift your float out and drop it down. Such an effective way of fishing this. I do like it, it is good. You see this fish there already, see him just fishing on that little ball. There we go. But you see how, even though it's only a 4/12 float, I know there's not much wind today, you see how stable that float is. And that's why that float choice is so important. Obviously my back shot on there to keep everything in play. It's so good, folks. There you go, that was a little tiny dink then. Could have been a bite, you know. Obviously it wasn't in my case, it was a liner, but could have been a bite. But perfect striking, yeah, you don't need to give it a big strike to set the hook, because the expander's so soft, it'll soon come through the hook when you're striking. Would I do change baits? Yeah, I'd do potentially change baits. If I was getting mired with smaller fish, then maybe a tiny little bit of corn. Even maggots can work well over, obviously, micros. You know, look at that fizzing now. But, you know, expanders is the one, folks. Just stick with your expanders, your 4mm, maybe 6mm sometimes. But usually for this style of fishing, and for this size of fish certainly, 4mm expanders is the way forward. So a couple of signs then, obviously. I'm just waiting for that fish to find your bait in that little tiny pile. Obviously if it's fishing too much, then what I would say is put your plummet back on again. Now what can happen, certainly if it's still a little bit warm for the time of year, obviously it's not today, then the fish will be aggressive and they will scour the bottom out. Even though we're up the slope a little bit, they will still come and scour the bottom of that lake bed out. So put a plummet on, and I guarantee that your float will sit that little bit lower. So literally all you've got to do is just move left or right of where you've been fishing, and then you're starting again. Even with this style, I could move like a foot to me left, foot to me right, feed in the same spot every time, and just pick the fish off your feed kind of thing. But obviously that's all about experimenting on the day. What would make a massive difference though is fishing where we are compared to fishing in the horrible silty bit of water right down the middle. There we go. He swam right the way up. When he hooked him, he swam right the way up, and that's what can happen with these F1s. They're brilliant little fish, they are. Proper angry little things, and they keep biting all day. They're so good, folks, F1's. Love them. Absolutely love them. Some people hate them, but I think they're brilliant. Oh, went for the scoop, didn't I? Tried to show off, folks, and it blooming swam out of my net. You see the beauty of that, like, softer elastic as well, folks, yeah? That 11's. It's cushioning all them lunges. And there we go, lovely. It's probably getting on for a pound, him. Pound for one. Beautiful fish. Just tucked in the side. We'll get him in the net with the others then. And then that's pretty much all there is to it. Obviously, you've seen how we started off, yeah? Putting that bait over a bigger area, getting the fish into your peg. Once they've arrived, stop feeding that way. Get it into a little tiny ball, and then you're super accurate then. You're just drawing sort of like them 1 or 2 fish in, putting your hook bait right over that little tiny ball, and it's just instant every time. It's so good. You've seen the difference there, you know, plain to see. A lot better sort of presentation wise with that ball than it is with the loose feeding, but you need to tap that bait in first to get the fish in your peg. As always, folks, get out, give it a go, and let us know how you get on. But that is deep water pellet fishing in a oneer. Yeah!
Right, you lads, very, very sorry to interrupt your video watching.
How dare you?
Quickly, if you haven't already noticed, we have managed to write a book, haven't we?
Yes, we have,
Which
Jamie.
is full of all our very bestest methods and features or whatever else we do on this wonderful subject of fishing. So if you haven't had a look already, go and have a look at winningways.shop and buy one for yourself.